just to present my friend and co-author and big professor Raffaele Scuderi from the University Kore of Enna in Sicily, Italy. Raffaele is also editor of the journal Tourist Economics, and he has a lot of publications in this area and other areas. And it's our pleasure to have Raffaele here. So thank you very much for being with us, Raffaele.
And thank you, Gabriel. I'm so grateful to you and to all the friends that are here today. I had the pleasure to meet the majority of you in Argentina and Uruguay. So I was talking with Natalia and was telling her that my last good memories of travel are dated back to my trip to Argentina and Uruguay before the pandemic started. So it's a pleasure to have you here for many reasons, and to be here, to be invited. It's an honor for me to be invited here. And thank you for all the activities you have been doing for tourism research dissemination. You have been doing a lot, as I always hear from Gabriel, and your work is amazing. And this is why I'm too honored to be here. Today, I want to talk about a topic we have been investigating, quite recently, and we are near to submit the paper, but the paper is not totally ready. You can see among us now Giulio Pedrini, who is my co-author, as well as with Vincenzo Fasone, who is not here. But my point is that we have been he has been collecting the data, and so if you have questions, I'm very happy to respond. But you can make questions also to him, because he was in charge to collect this data. But I will mention our survey while talking about the paper. The paper is about the job market. Can I share my screen, Gabriel? Yes. Okay. I need to just give me one moment. Okay. So I think it should work. Okay. Can you see my screen? Okay. This is the title of the paper. As I was telling you, it's about the job market in tourism. We focused on the willingness to improve by seasonal workers of tourism, and the extent to which they are willing to improve themselves, as I just said, because through the training and improvement of their skills. This is quite a hot topic in tourism, in our view. Okay, this is the outline, but I will go forward. The point is that tourism is a strange industry, as we all know, because it's basically seasonal. Of course, there are exceptions, interesting exceptions. But the point is that the majority of the workforce in tourism is basically flexible. This means that flexibility of the workforce and seasonality creates a sort of trade-off, because as people is employed in tourism not for consecutive times, and because tourism is basically an industry that basically requires low skills, this means that there is a few chance to improve industry-related skills, and at the same time, the workers may have few incentives to search for improvement of their skills. They could have less incentives to improve themselves, especially after the recession, where people is basically in search for work, no matter of issues about the improvement or their skills, which becomes secondary, because the work search is after a crisis like the COVID-19 one becomes crucial. So what we basically do with this research is trying to see what are the determinants of the workers' willingness to acquire industry-related skills by attending additional training. What we basically focus on is the willingness of people to get trained. We actually see two different points of view. The first one is the willingness of people to get trained, and the second one is the willingness to pay in order to get trained. So we try to investigate two aspects. The first one is monetary, that is whether people is willing to invest their money. And the second one is the mere fact that people is willing to train. So we try to focus on these two aspects. But basically, as I will show, we don't see a substantive difference between the monetary willingness to pay, willingness to attend, the non-monetary willingness to attend, because basically the same determinants rule for both aspects, but there will be some exception I will talk about in a few minutes. Sorry, but okay, now it's better. I have just the windows of Zoom. They were covering my slides, so now it works. Okay, these are the aims of this paper I'm presenting. We are investigating how seasonal employment may gauge workers' willingness to invest in tourism-related training. We do it by focusing on a specific sample, that is the sample of seasonal workers. We only interviewed seasonal workers in a very touristic area, the one in the Rimini province in Italy. But again, I will talk about it later. These are the research questions. We are not interested only in seeing what are the determinants of workers in tourism willing to improve themselves, but also we want to see how the different stages of the employment process matter, whether they matter to stimulate the workers' willingness to invest in training. And by this, I mean that the people that, I will be more specific later, but we will split the employment experience in different stages. And we asked every worker some questions about each of the stages. And then we try to associate their experience at each of the stages with their willingness to invest, just to see if a peculiar stage may give some influence to their actual willingness to improve through training. Just a couple of thoughts about what emerged from our literature review. It is a fact that seasonality, well, actually it's not a fact, but it has been found that seasonality has some influence in workers' willingness to invest in training to improve themselves. The point is that from the work demand side, that is from the enterprise, from the firm level side, that is the side that demands the work, actually, when you have personnel, when you have people that work with you, that are characterized by a frequent turnover, if the set of your employees change frequently, the entrepreneur doesn't have a specific, let's say, incentive to sponsor training, investment. This has been pointed out by some contributions in the literature. But this is quite easy to understand. It is quite easy to understand why. If you don't invest in people that maybe soon or later will leave the position they have, because it's going to be just a loss of money. You will improve the skills, but your firm won't benefit that much. So from the one side, from the firm side, entrepreneurs do not have so many incentives to invest. Tourism firms do not have, let's say, willingness to invest in training for workers. This means that less training means some consequences for the productivity. If people is not trained adequately, productivity may jeopardize, service quality may decrease, and this happens. And when this happens in the tourism industry, where the motivation and qualification of the workforce is influential, as tourism is a typically labor-intensive sector, this may have consequences on customer satisfaction. The ideal situation would be the one where firms and local institutions would provide incentives to invest in training to seasonal workers. But this doesn't happen so frequently. From the labor supply side, that is, from the side of workers, actually the seasonality itself may lead to lower job satisfaction than other type of works. Typically, the employment in tourism is indeed flexible, but it is not compensated by a suitable work-life balance, because usually people work at unsocial times and days. People in tourism often work during summers, so the typical social time. People do not rest during summer because they are employed in tourism. Their work time in summer is such that they cannot balance their personal life with what the job itself requires. But there is also another point. It has been noted that tourism, young workers, the last point I reported here, the paper of Boyens, investigates about young workers. And young workers in tourism typically have low-level skills and do not decide to train or to keep in getting an education that is suitable for a tourist job, because they see few options, few possibilities to improve their career. This is another point. All this justifies our interest in investigating the extent to which there's the interest in the willingness to be trained is somehow proper of tourism workers. If a worker is not motivated properly, if you don't see career options, if you see your work as unstable, as seasonal, as changing, you may not be incentivized in improve your skills. At the same time, this, as I said at the beginning of this presentation, this may be associated with the different stages of the employment process. The first stage is the job searching phase. The second stage is the selection process. The third stage is experience in the workplace. We try to see how the more or less happy experience during the job search, during the selection, and during the experience in the workplace, how the characteristics of these phases, that is the more positive or negative experience, can have some can bring to some effect in, let's say, stimulating the worker in searching for training. We try to see, for instance, if a good experience during at the workplace is likely to be associated with the willingness to search for training. Of course, we may hypothesize that if the worker had a good experience while working in tourism, he could have gained interest in staying, in continuing working in the industry tourism. And so the consequent willingness to improve the skills. In order to find an answer to our theoretical, let's say, framework, we used a survey, the data coming from a survey that we made in 2019. This was the last summer before the pandemic. So although I'm talking about a survey that was administered 2 years ago, but still it was the last, let's say, normal summer we lived before the pandemic. The area of interest is the Rimini province. Rimini province is a very well-known tourist destination in Italy. It is located nearly in the northeast of Italy, and it is a mass tourism destination. So basically, there are a lot of tourism firms around there. It has nearly 3.78 million of arrivals, which are growing constantly until the pandemic, of course. And as it is a sun, sand, and sea destination, it is characterized by a high degree of seasonality. So the area itself is touristic and it is seasonal too. Our sample is made on seasonal workers. We had a sort of list of seasonal workers from local policy authorities, but we did not make a randomly selected sample. We made, we made an ad hoc sample, but we tried to balance it in terms of gender and educational attainment. And we nearly got the same characteristics in the sample as in the population of reference. So, but of course, this is not a representative sample, which is actually, as you all know, the limit of a lot of surveys in the tourism industry. The questionnaire was very long, actually. It's very long. It had 9 sections with a lot of questions. The ones I'm reporting in the slide are the titles of the sections, are the topics of the sections. For instance, the first part of the questionnaire investigated about the selection process. The second one about the characteristics of the job post. The third one investigated about the workers' training needs and willingness to participate in further training programs. And from the third section, as you can understand, we took the questions about the workers' willingness to invest in training. We had a section, the fourth one, on ex-ante motivation and many other types of questions. We have a very rich database. So as you know, when you have a lot of information, if you cannot handle the information properly, you don't have information at all. So the first tricky aspect was to try to read this huge information we got from our survey. And actually, what we have done is to select the questionnaire items that would concern the 3 typical stages of the employment process. That is the pre-hiring, the search phase, the hiring phase, the one when you're under scrutiny from your hopefully future employer, and the third stage is the actual stage of employment. so the characteristic of the work experience. What we have done is to select from this very rich set of questions, the ones concerning each of the phase, and we did a preliminary exploratory analysis by extracting components from principal component analysis. For instance, in the pre-hiring phase, we extracted components that are related to growth desire. For instance, you search for a job in tourism because you want to make yourself growing, because you want to increase income, because you are interested in being relational with others, because you want to improve your work-life balance. These are all components that we extracted from the set of items that we related to the pre-hiring stage. Concerning the hiring stage, we extracted information about the search process itself, whether it was easy or not to find a job, the hiring process itself, how it went, because if the hiring process is particular, let's say, hard to sustain by the worker, maybe there could be less interest in future improvement through successive training. And if they had enough information about the job, that is the formation of expectations about the job in the hiring stage. When you form your expectation and your actual job differs from your previous expectation, maybe you're not that motivated anymore if your expectations are lower than you expect. And then in the third feature, we extracted components concerning the work experience itself, that is a job strain, or whether workers had the support from the organization, if they are committed effectively with the job post, the relationship with the customers, and the type of occupation. After extracting these components, okay, we used all these components in our regression model. Here I present some descriptive statistics. We use basically probability regression, where the dependent variable is a dichotomic variable, assuming the value of 1, in case the worker, the client, wants to, actually, when she declares that she's willing to search for training, she would improve herself by formal training in order to be to gain skills for the tourism industry. So we call it willingness to invest in training, WTIT. This is a first dependent variable we investigate about. We call it also train property. This is a propensity to search for training. We also assessed, we include in the paper we are preparing another variable we call, it is not reported here, but we call it monetary willingness to invest in training. That is, the question for this second dependent variable was, will you invest money for training yourself for the tourism industry? So, as I pointed out at the very beginning of this presentation, we have two dependent variables. We investigate on two dependent variables. The first one is just the willingness to invest in tourism, and the second one is whether the tourism worker would put money in order to gain a training. We used the specification model. Used many variables here. I only report the main results. There are there are many more results from our estimates, but here I only extracted what matters to us. And that is, these are the main results. And I would like to point out what it follows, as you can see from here. Look at the pre-hiring stage. people, the willingness to invest in training is associated with those that before being employed in tourism had personal growth as a motivation. If before being employed you had the motivation to increase your income, look at our second row, you get a negative sign. This means that, of course, if you are willing to work in tourism, you don't look that much at the money aspect. And so the money aspect is not related with those that are willing to invest in training. The more you work, jobs train, the less you're searching for training in tourism. The more you're committed to your workplace, the more you are willing to invest in tourism. Italian citizenship is very interesting because non-Italians are more willing to invest in training than Italians. This is interesting. It seems that there is not a gender effect because the willingness to improve themselves is not, is weakly related with gender. It's not related at all with educational attainment. This is, in our opinion, this happens because basically tourism is a low skills industry. The level of human capital is, the required level of human capital is low. This is why the educational attainment does not necessarily is not necessarily related to the willingness to invest in training. Age is not necessarily a significant factor, and I would like to show you what emerges from our very last variable, experience. Experience is the number of years the worker has been employed in the tourism industry. The more experience they had, it seems that experience is not significant in driving their willingness to. This is interesting because maybe people experience that tourism doesn't require that high level of training. Maybe the one they had, in their opinion, is enough. And this again confirms the tourism industry as a low skill level. But this a lot of discussion. I know that among you there is people that is specialized in the labor market or that has investigated about the labor market or in tourism. There are many aspects that emerge from here that recall the current literature on the topic. We are aware of this. But at the same time, as we are investigating a specific aspect that is the willingness to invest, maybe this can complement the existing information on the job market in tourism. The other aspect, there is the monetary aspect, whether people is willing to invest money in the tourism industry. Well, actually, they more or less recall the same findings we had from the willingness, not monetary, but only willingness to invest in training. Here there is something new only about two aspects. The first one is the selection through CV. That is, if people has been selected according to their objective past experiences, that is, if the employer looked at their CV and selected themselves for for their past experiences, because they had a very good CVs, these people, those that have let's say, they were selected thanks to their CVs, are those that are willing to put money in their investment to be trained. And I would like to point out that as here I'm displaying marginal effects, this variable selection through CV has in absolute terms has the highest value. So it seems that if you, we are just trying to interpret. Of course, we may discuss about it, but it seems that if you are aware of what the tourism, the most experienced people, that is those that are aware of what the tourism is, would be motivated to put money in the investment for training. This is also, but actually I would say that this is a weak evidence, because it does not correspond to a similar willingness to invest in training as shown in the previous set of estimates. That is, this selection through CV is not significant when we made this first regression, because we did not report it because it is not significant. So this is quite a tricky result that needs to be investigated more in depth. But what I would like to point out is also age. Age now is significant. So older people are willing to put less money in investing in tourism, maybe because they are, the more time passes, the more maybe they are aware that experience matters more than putting money in investing in tourism. But now also I would like to stress the experience regressor, which now, when we talk about putting money, now it seems that experience is significant. So the higher the experience in the sector, the more people wants to put money in order to get trained in the tourism industry. And this is maybe due to the fact that maybe putting money in training investment means to search for a high quality training. And perhaps it might be that the more experience they get, the more they are aware that high quality training can be more effective than generic training. Maybe these people, experienced people that are aware of what the industry is, could be in search of specific training. But we are still thinking of how to improve the interpretation of our results. So to conclude, it seems that our guess that some aspects of the experience, the job experience of a seasonal worker matter more than others. For instance, motivations matter more than education in searching for a skill improvement. Organizational commitment could improve workers' incentive to acquire training. The pre-hiring stage, that is the stage where you ask yourself, where do you want to go? What kind of job you want to search? This pre-hiring stage is very important in driving your willing to improve yourself. Again, this is a paper that is still under construction, but we would like to share with you these preliminary results. We got, in our view, some interesting evidence, which of course has to be refined and improved much more in the next weeks. There are limitations, but I don't want to discuss about them, as every paper has limitations indeed. But of course the sample is not representative. Observations are cross-sectional. There are limitations also in the type of questions we surveyed. But we are confident, that this paper gives some. These results give some initial suggestions to a further improvement of the work, and I thank you for your attention. This is the last slides, and grazie.
Thank you very much, Raffaele. Thank you for the very interesting presentation. And now we open. I think we have a lot of people that want to ask questions and make comments. So let's start with the Professor Natalia Porto.
Thank you. Raffaele, I like the paper very much. We are working on young people in tourism, so it is very interesting for me, the paper. I have so many questions, but I'm going to suggest something also. The first is that I would like to see some descriptive analysis of your sample, because you mention age, experience, education, but we don't know about those numbers. So I think it is interesting to know that before your analysis. You said also that young people are overrepresented in your sample, and I am wondering about the average young people in the tourism Italian sector. So are you sure that young people are overrepresented, or it is the common feature in the tourism sector? The other thing is, I think you mentioned in your conclusions that the results would be very different if you make the questionnaire before the season. You made it after, no? After the season, Raffaele.
You want the answer now, or you can?
I know, because I'm not sure. The questionnaire was.
I was in charge for the sample and the survey, and it was administered during the season. While working, yes. While
working, okay. I think okay, but you can do it before, no, because you don't have the people. Okay.
They don't work yet.
Okay. The other thing is that I think that you miss informality in your analysis. You mentioned experience, age, education, and informality. That is very important in tourism, and more in seasonal tourism. No, I think you have to mention or to something with informality, legal informality, so insurance and those kind of things, and the other informality, the part-time work, and the other. The other thing is that I don't know if your sample is waiters. I don't know the field in the tourism. So I think the results would be very different if you talk about more qualified people in tourism versus waiters, for example. The willingness to pay would be very different, I think. But I don't know if you can capture those things in your sample or your questionnaire. I think perhaps seasonal people is young people that are only working that summer, not the other summer. So this could condition your results, I think. No, I think these are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalia. Albert, sorry, Gabriel, should I go with the answers?
Yes, please.
Okay. If you don't mind, I can split the answers with Giulio, who, as you know, was in charge of some aspects about the data. For what concerns the descriptive analysis, we found that actually the age of our sample was slightly lower than the one of the population, but basically it was quite in line. So even if it was higher or lower, it is not still, it's not a representative sample. So from a strictly methodological point of view, it has the huge limitations of a non-representative sample. We are aware of this, but as you know, we in many aspects of the tourism industry, we have to work with the ingredients we have, and sometimes, you know, in tourism, this is one main limitation. Very good studies are made on the basis of non-representative samples. So it is actually a limitation, although we found that the sample was quite in line. Actually, the sample is made of people with secondary, high school, quite young, and this confirms indeed that maybe it's not a matter of, my view, of over-representation of young people, because in terms of age we are quite in line, but indeed in general the seasonal work is searched from young people more frequently than old people. Indeed the age is quite low, but at the same time the young age is the one that potentially is eligible for improvement and for the sake of training, let's say. But your question, your observation, your claim was very interesting.
Sorry, Raffaele, I missed one. I want to know also if the people, you said that they were Italian, most of them Italian, but are from the region or from other regions? Sorry, the interruption.
Yeah, no problem. People is both Italian and there are also foreign people. So the sample, actually, the prevalence is of Italian people. Giulio can give an answer to this, but we had both. So this is why we used the dummy for Italian people. Giulio,
yes,
can you please say?
They are mostly Italian, but they are living in the area. But there are a substantial component, significant component of immigrants. And immigrants, interesting, are those that are more willing to improve, and because they see tourism industry as an opportunity for a long-term job, while Italians are mainly students that indeed don't think to continue working in the sector afterwards. So this is the main reason. But there are also some interesting papers that find similar results in Hawaii, for instance. I found a paper on in Hawaii, immigrants are and women, low-skilled, low-qualified women find more attractive this tourism-related job, such as waiters or cleaning hotel, compared to the residents. So this is quite in line with the literature. Thanks.
Yeah, I just want to say a couple of words about your claims, Natalia. As the informality, yes, the informal sector is very important in tourism, especially in many destinations. We all know that the gray economy is, you know, tourism is characterized by a lot of gray jobs. Here in that area, we are talking about a very mass tourism area with a lot of controls by local authorities. So, you know, firms have low incentives to go gray, let's say, to be informal. So in most of the cases, there is in all the cases of the people we interviewed, they are all regular workers. Because they come from the list that the local authorities have, the list of tourism workers, let's say seasonal tourism workers. Qualification you made, it is so, what you say, you know, the difference between a clerk or say a waiter or a manager in tourism. Yeah, this is very important. The job you make is very important. But about this, we made we different trials with our variables. And the set of variables that concern qualification, the type of job was not significant. So we dropped it out of the specification. This is, yeah, this is counterintuitive. I'm aware of this. We should explain it carefully in the paper. But maybe we can include it as a robustness check stage and see.
Yes, just to add that probably the sample, since is just composed by seasonal young workers mainly, these jobs are really the type of occupation is not very does not vary so much between workers. So there are 2 or 3 the almost entire sample.
Can you hear Giulio?
Okay, so I was just saying that the occupations are not so many, so not so different. So we found most of them are waiter, cleaning people, and a watcher. So this is the 3 main and the kitchen assistant. So very low skilled occupation and not very different one to each other. So this is probably one reason for which we don't find so many different.
So you have to point it more explicitly, maybe. This point is very important, I think.
Of course, correct. Thanks.
Miriam Scaglione, please.
Yes, I will put my, yes. Yes, very interesting, the paper. I really like it, but I have some questions. One of the question is, you see, when I think of the seasonal workers in Switzerland, you see, for instance, it's opposite. What I know the best is the people that working in the ski lift every winter. And you know, in this case, the seasonal workers are, some of them are French or for the environment of the ski lift situation, or they are people working in the, how you say, contadini, people working in the land, agricultor. They have nothing to do during the winter, and they go, and a lot of them are very well trained because they are ski monitors. Then they know how to teach ski. Then have you make any difference between the people that they are coming every year or not? Because I have another example. I have one of my nieces who is Italian, and she's how do you say, garde côte. Is the one who look that everybody would get sunk in the sea, etc. And I think that people probably come every year to do this work. This is the first question. Let me make like Natalia to make all the questions in once. And then, do you have any variable that show you in which kind this, because in Switzerland, there are some trainees that here, in order to make a school of hotellerie or tourism, you have to make a training before. Then there are students that do that before going to the school to make the bachelor. And probably they have another point of view that the people that do that for the alimentary point of view. The students that work in summer because they need that to pay their apartment during the time. I think this the willingly to pay, the willingly to be trained could be different. And then, yes, and I have another question. It is about the questionnaire. Have you made the translation of the questionnaire in other language? We have some experience in the Institute of Tourism. When we calculated impact of tourism, we have to ask this questionnaire to the people that they are working in the hotels. They are maids and cleaning room people, and we we try to translate our questionnaire in Spanish, in Portuguese, the language that we know that there are people that they were more willingly to answer if there is in their language. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Miriam. Happy to see you. Sorry, just wanted to say hello to also to Carolina and Erika. Ciao a tu, ciao a voi. I saw also some other friends, Raul, but okay, sorry. I'm stopping to say hello to everybody. I'm answering to your questions. As to experience, I mean, your first question was, let me try to interpret it. If we measured somehow the experience of workers, because there are workers that do the same job every year, we included a regressor about experience. And we asked how many years you have been doing this job in tourism. And this regressor was significant and positively related to the willingness to get trained only from the monetary side. That is, it seems like people is not interested in, let's say, if we relate the monetary willingness to get trained, the monetary, to the fact that they pay to get a better training, they're more interested in paying than in getting a generic training, the more experience they have. So it seems to be a positive correlation about this. It's like the more experience you have, the more qualified you want to get a training. The area, of course, is full of heterogeneous jobs. For instance, the waiter requires those skills, the bagnino, the lifeguard at the beach requires, specific skills. So once you get them, you don't need them because you already gained them, and every year you repeat the same job. So this matter of the type of occupation maybe can influence the willingness to get trained. But as Giulio stressed, in our sample, the type of occupation is quite heterogeneous, does not change that much. Maybe we didn't catch the specificity of some type of jobs, like the lifeguard compared to the waiter. But in order to do this, we need a stratified sample, or at least a sample within each of the categories. But you had a very interesting, your point is very, very interesting. As to the fact that tourism workers have to go to mandatory schools, actually is not the same in Italy. Of course, it is, if you come from a tourism school, at the selection stage, maybe you are preferred than others because you got some specific skills. But coming from a tourism school is not significantly related to the willingness to get trained.
Yes, I will, excuse me that I interrupt you. It's not that the students go after. Here in Switzerland, in order to have the opportunity to make the inscription in a tourism school, in the Fachhochschule, you need to have some experience. Then you already have to make an internship in a company, in a restaurant, whatever. And then the student have to get 3 months to have this experience, and then they will be accepted in the school. You see, in order to make the career, you have to have some experience before. And then, of course, people look to go, to the ski lift and seasonally, the unique opportunity. But they are internship. Then you pay less.
I see.
Less, you pay them, but you pay less than the worker. Hopefully, if it is not practice.
Well, actually, tourism schools are secondary schools typically in Italy, and I'm not sure. Actually, as far as I read the data, we did not catch people making the training for during their schools. We did not catch this type of worker, but this happens in Italy too, because this type of secondary school, tourism school needs the actual training at a real hotel or accommodation structure, because otherwise it doesn't work.
Yes.
As to the translation of the question, I'm not sure we did it. So Julia, we didn't do any translation.
Unfortunately, not the people that administered the survey were Italian people, and they just provide support to workers, maybe translating some questions if they didn't speak Italian very much, but the written questionnaire was entirely in Italian.
Yes. Well, this is it's just a suggestion. Next time, it's very important when you are asking a lower skill people to ask in their language. There are no more, because it should be Spanish, because there are a lot of Argentinian, I think, working there as newcomers with a double passport and so forth. And then you can increase the number of answers, because the people are happy to answer in their language, and then you increase the accuracy of the things. We are very succeed when we do that in our but very, very nice work. Thank you.
Grazie. Thank you, Miriam.
Thank you very much.
Carolina, is it Carolina's turn?
Carolina Garcia, please.
Hi, how are you? Congratulations for the presentation. Nice to see you too, Raffaele. I had two comments just to contribute as well. Question. The first one is, if you had into account the size of the employer or some measure of that, thinking about the expectations of the worker that could be different, for instance, if he or she is going to work in a big chain hotel or then in a small hostel. In terms of training, maybe he or she expects like some sort of different thing. And the other one is, if you have already elaborated on some policy implications of this paper that you would like to share with us, maybe in terms of the role of the public sector, providing incentives to workers, or to the private sector itself, or then to training providers. I don't know how that works in Italy, if this training is usually provided by educative centers or then by the private sector itself, the tourism private sector, I mean. That's it, and congratulations again.
Thank you, Carolina. Nice to see you by my side as well. As to the size of the employer, maybe Giulio can be much more specific about this, but as far as I remember, we don't have this type of question in the questionnaire.
No, we don't have it. We can work a bit on it, because we have, for instance, the number of stars of the hotels. So usually 4-star hotels are larger. This is an issue. We can work also on the type of the other employers. For instance, we have retail shops, we have restaurants. So we can work a bit on the industry of the employer, and then give some insights related to the assumption that usually one can rely on when discussing the industry and the size of the employer, the size in relation with the industry. This is the only thing that maybe we can work a bit on it, and then thank you for the suggestion, which is very useful, I think.
I was thinking that your point is very appropriate, Carolina. I was thinking also that maybe it can become tricky when we are in presence of a tourist worker that has changed a lot of employers over the time. So maybe she could have gained a very heterogeneous experience. Maybe she currently works for a 4-star hotel, but whether she searches for training or not does not depend on her current experience, but rather on the accumulation of experiences. But still, your point on the type of current worker is, in my opinion, is valid, because it is still a trial we can do if the current type of occupation can somehow be influential to this type of searching for the training. And as to policy implications, this point is we are still drawing the policy implications, but we have pointed out several aspects. The first one is indeed about the quality of improvement. Tourism is a low-skill industry, so maybe the innovation for this industry can come from different sides, different from the training of workers, but still, as the quality of the service is a key component of the tourism product, training still is still a hot issue. The second type of policy implications, as you said, is for training centers. There are different training centers. Specialized training is basically made by private companies. Some universities are running some executives, but we want to witness in our policy implication that there is still room for a market for training in tourism, although it is very, this type, the type of customer for this kind of education industry has some specific features, because not all tourism workers can be generally interested in this. But maybe we pointed out that job quality is one of the factors that makes the difference. If you are happy with your work, you want to improve yourself, although tourism jobs do not necessarily give you more money than other types of jobs. It is also, there are some suggestions in improving the quality of tourist jobs, because it is a sort of loop. When you motivate job workers, they search for improving themselves, and the firm itself can benefit from such an improvement.
Natalia.
No, I have a comment and a mini joke. I think we can make a brief time to discuss practical implications for publishing a paper, as we sometimes talked with Gabriel. I would like to ask if you think that your paper could be published because you take a small case of Rimini, very specific, and the criticism that we received many times from many journals is that case studies so small are not replicable at other cases. So I don't know. Well, this is the question. If you think this is or a case that you can extrapolate, or your opinion about that.
Well, Natalia, I got rejected also sometimes because of the same reason. So we all suffer from the same thing. Yeah, this is one point, but I believe that the study, as the The type of sample has several advantages in my view, because the area is a mass tourism area. It can be close to many mass tourism areas all around the world. I'm thinking of Balearic Islands or also the Canarian Islands, etc., or others in South America. This we are talking about a mass tourism destination. This is one strength point to make our study valid externally, because the point is to convince people that your study is valid externally.
Mm-hmm.
It is quite limited because, of course, we are talking about a single destination, which is influenced by low constraints, by the system of education, which is not so addressed to tourism. Although, as I said, there are chances to improve the tourism training, it is not so specific. There are not so many schools, so maybe it is true that workers do not necessarily find the chances to improve themselves as in other parts of the world. This is another limitation. But again, in our view, our sample concerns a mass tourism destination whose results can be somehow useful to similar places.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
More comments or questions or? You know, to the point that you were talking now, to be universal, you have to be local. So it's not important if the job is good and has new ideas. I think it's not important if you are studying a small case in a small country.
No, I agree. I agree with you. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is the point. No, I think we have
Raffaele,
a lot of examples.
Do you have a draft of your paper that you want to share or not? Not yet. A draft of your paper to share or not yet?
You are muted.
Yeah.
Muted.
No, it's so sorry, Natalia, it's not ready yet. But
Okay.
once I'll have it, I will be happy to send it to you.
Okay, thank you.
No, I think
Thank you.
it could be interesting, but because as you see, Raffaele, we have several people here working on this topic. So, and the topic is not only interesting, but also not well studied yet. So everybody talks about the fundamental issue of jobs created by tourism, but we still have not many academic studies on this. This is my opinion. So I think this is a fertile field to develop, and just try to be in contact, because another thing that is interesting is to replicate similar studies in different places in order to have the possibility of comparing results and the understanding if some of the results depend on the destination or not. No, but what I say is that several people here in this room are working on this topic. So let's try to, remember that we have our workshop in November, at the end of November. So we have received some collaboration from some people, but probably if we receive an interesting quantity of papers on this topic, we can organize a special session on this, if you agree. A special session, and probably, as we did in the last workshop, inviting some people from the not the academic side, but from the cooking side, let's say. Okay, so we have our deadline for the workshop is next Monday. But as I said, if we receive, let's say, 4 or 5 papers on this topic, I will suggest to organize a special session of the workshop in this topic that we can conclude with a general discussion, a roundtable, and the participation of some people from the market side, let's say. I don't know how to call it, politicians, planners, people dressed as Raffaele Scuderi. So more questions or comments, please. Nobody wants to say something more or something else? I remember that next seminar is Chiara delle Novare, a co-author of Raffaele, and so you are all invited for the seminar of Chiara. I don't remember what is presenting Chiara, because Chiara is from the side of cultural economics, no? But I don't remember what is the paper. The paper is, I think this time is not on cultural economics, but more on tourism.
Yeah, it's I'm co-author of that paper, so I the safety perception of tourists doing.
Oh, perfect. This is also a topic.
Time. Yeah.
This is also a topic that we have many people interested on. So last call for comment, questions, something to say. Thank you to Raffaele and to Julie also. What else?
Thank you very much.
Very nice discussion, very nice presentation. So we are happy. Thank you very much to everybody. And remember the workshop next Monday. Veronica, I see, I'm watching you. Remember the workshop, to send the paper, all the people here, because till now we have received something like 6 papers only. So remember to send the paper, okay? Now, you don't need to send the paper, you need to send an abstract, okay? See you next Thursday. Thank you, Raffaele. Thank you, Julio.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Bye.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Have a nice evening. Thank you.
Ciao, Raúl.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
for everything.
Ciao.
Nice
Ciao,
paper.
Pedro, que no te vi, pero también buena jornada.